A very, very good afternoon. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine. Another week, another celebration of Women in Wine, and a preparation. Just 2 days to go until International Pinot Noir Day. It's another great day in the endless wine calendar of celebration, one that I'm particularly looking forward to because I love Pinot Noir. And as we don't have a show on a Wednesday, we thought we'd have today as the day to celebrate not just Pinot Noir, but in keeping with the theme of Women in Wine, which has played out through August thus far, the chance to celebrate some women in Pinot Noir in particular. And gee, do we have an all-star lineup? And I'll be introducing them in just a moment. We've had a terrific month so far, talking to women in Pinot Noir, talking to women in Chenin Blanc, talking to women across the winemaking space, in CEO roles, in marketing roles, really getting a sense of how women pretty much make the wine industry work in South Africa, and also drinking some terrific wine along the way. Doing it both with our live shows, which continue every Monday and Thursday, but also our recorded shows. You might have seen last week's episode, the Women of Boschendal, where we spoke to Georgie Davidson, the new CEO. We also caught up with Shirley Van Beek, who is the marketing manager, as well as Danielle Coetzee, who makes the bubbles at Boschendal, the three of them together discussing their journeys in wine. And a little different tomorrow online from mid-morning or so, we're going to be chatting to Jade Seeliger from Nutritional Solutions. What should you be drinking? What shouldn't you be drinking? What are you looking out for when you're buying wine to make it all just a little healthier? Good news, it definitely includes Pinot Noir, so look out for that tomorrow. There's also a live show coming up on Thursday, and a little later on in the show, I will let you know what to look out for. And on Wednesday, being Pinot Noir Day, if you're down at Pick and Pay, there is a grand special on Pinot Noir. Now, I've been sworn to secrecy. They've told me I cannot tell you what it is, but I do know what it is. And so if you get a chance to do some wine shopping on Wednesday and you like your Pinot Noir, you're in for something of a treat. You're also in for a real treat this evening because we have a quintet of Pinot Noir lovers who know both the grape and the industry intimately. They're all entrepreneurial. They're all incredibly skilled in the wine space, and they love a glass of wine, which makes them perfect to be on the show. So in no particular order, it's a very, very, very warm welcome to Carolyn Martin from Creation, who's with us, Jessica from Jessica's Saurwein Wines, Catherine Marshall is with us, Berene Sauls from Tesselaarsdal makes return, and a debut for by some distance, the most talented of the Newton Johnsons, Nadia, is with us as well. Guys, welcome all of you, and lovely to have you on in this month of Women in Wine and this day of Women in Pinot Noir. And it's a space all of you tick a very large box for in both cases. And there's lots of wine to discuss, lots of journeys to discuss. But I'd like to set a Pinot Noir scene first of all. Catherine, if I can seize upon you to get us going. Just an understanding of Pinot Noir in South Africa, where it is, why you feel it does so well, and why Pinot Noir is a day we should really be celebrating on Wednesday.
Well, thanks, Dan. Sure. My journey started a very long time ago. I was just reflecting on it. 1997, when the wine industry was really a very different landscape than what it is today. So I'm not sure why Pinot. A lot of people ask me that question. Why did I choose Pinot Noir? Why Pinot, especially on that landscape when nobody was drinking Pinot Noir? But it was something that just caught my attention, drinking Burgundy back then. And I just fell in love with the grape, decided to embark on the long journey of going for Pinot. And why Pinot? I think it's the most extraordinary grape. I think it has everything that you really are looking for in a glass of wine. It's so individual. It's so different, particularly for just first up, you've got a color that is quite unique. I call it royal. It's really garnet. It's bright. It's just an incredibly seductive color, first of all. And when you put it to your nose, there's just something about that wine that just takes you in, you know. And then when you get it into down your throat, there's something spiritual that happens. And it's a wine that can move people. I've actually seen people like really totally overwhelmed by what they're smelling and what they're tasting. And I think it's something to do with the tension of the wine. There's something really kind of tight and and incredible that you can't help but wanting to go in and take another sip and find out what is this wine all about. And I also find it is one of the wines that a lot of the chefs love to work with, because it pairs so beautifully with food, and especially kind of your Eastern Japanese style food, and your French food, obviously from Burgundy. So it is one of those wines that can also age for a long time. It does kind of change its character, moves from sort of bright strawberry, lipsticky characters into the sort of beautiful tertiary forest floor characters that I love to drink. So because it's got good acidity, freshness, and good pH, it's a wine that can also keep for a long time. So my journey with Pinot has been incredible, because I've also managed to find vineyards over my time with this grape, from Stellenbosch to George to Elgin, the Himalayan Valley, and everywhere else in between. So I've kind of had a hands-on look-see at sites. And so when I was in Burgundy, I realized one thing that a lot of us are getting more and more is that the soil for Pinot is absolutely critical, crucial to defining the honesty of this and the purity of this wine. So besides obviously the elevation and cool temperature, the soils are the thing that really are the most important for me. So much so that I've actually created two wines. One is the sandstone, which is one we have in our glass now, and then we have the clay soils. And these two wines tell a really, really incredible story. They are so different in the glass, and I think that's really what I want to do with my wines, is to tell the story of soils and vintage, and really my interpretation of that, because you can't really discount the winemaker's touch either. So I think all of those things, after 27 years of doing Pinot, or 24 years, sorry, let me not jump the gun, has taught me that. So Dan, that's kind of the story in a nutshell of where I'm at with Pinot.
Which tells not just your story, but also highlights Pinot Noir as a whole. And I've been lucky enough to drink Pinot Noir from different parts of the world. South African Pinot Noir coming into its own. You mentioned Burgundy, and Burgundy automatically comes up when we discuss Pinot Noir for very good reason. Berene, a conversation we've had before in different ways, but to pick up on it again, Burgundy is the home of Pinot Noir, and not unfairly so. But the home of Southern Hemisphere Pinot Noir, shall we say? I think it's very much the Himalayan Valley. Remind us, if you will, that wonderful stretch which you call home. What is it about that part of the world that just allows you as a winemaker to deliver the kind of Pinot Noir so successfully that you and your neighbors keep doing?
Thank you very much, Dan. Good evening, everyone. Yes, the Himalayan Valley is truly exceptional for Pinot Noir. It is widely known for its maritime climate, so it's very cool influenced. And then there's also the 35% clay-rich soils. And the Himalayan is divided into 3 wards. So it's the Himalayan Valley at the bottom parts, following Hamilton Russell Vineyards. Up further on, you get Upper Himalayan Valley, and more to Croatian side, Ataraxia, and the vineyards of La Vierge. It's the Himalayan Ridge. And it just delivers well-known Pinots, and it expresses this cool climate of the area and the Walker Bay region very, very well.
As we are going to see in your wine just a little later on. What about the selling of Himalayan, Caroline? You have got the job after the Swiss export, who does the easy work of actually making the wine as it produced. You've now got to sell it to the rest of the world. What for you is the understanding of our Pinot Noir beyond just South Africa? Are we still seen as, well, it's kind of a Burgundian style, or are people starting to say, well, that's South African Pinot Noir on its own terms?
I think people are definitely, they're starting to enjoy Pinot Noir from South Africa, and we certainly are providing great quality in relation to value for money. We've got an awesome climate here. It's good for humans and it's great for vineyards as well. We don't generally have the hail and the frost and the flooding that we've seen elsewhere in the world, which has been such a huge issue in the Pfalz and in Burgundy this year. And there's a worldwide shortage of Pinot Noir, and that gives South Africa an opportunity to get onto the world stage and show people just what we are producing. So I think although we have, a limited amount of areas where we can grow Pinot Noir, just like the rest of the world does, the Himalayan Ardor and definitely Elgin are one of the places where it grows quite well.
And we see regular examples of that. We've got some examples of that today. We're going to be trying them just a little later on in the show. In terms of the grape itself, Jessica, for you as a winemaker, is this a simple grape? Is it a temperamental one? Does it take a lot of effort? What are the pros and cons of deciding Pinot Noir is something I would like to make?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show, Dan. And what a great question. So I think Pinot Noir, from my relatively short experience since 2008, is a pretty finicky grape. It has a very thin skin. It can be very prone to rot, but I think if you plant it in the right place, then pretty much your problems are solved. Then you just have to make sure you don't make any big mistakes in the cellar. And I think that is really one of the key things. It's all about using your intuition and your experience to work with the grape and work with each different vintage, because every vintage, the weather gods throw you a set of different cards, and you have to make of it, the best that you can humanly do. And I think, as Carolyn already mentioned, in South Africa, we have a relatively temperate climate. So that is really of benefit to the quality production. And of course, the soils are, very, very important. So the Pinot Noir, which we're tasting tonight, comes from the Himalayan Ridge. And the soils there are really excellent for Pinot Noir because of the fact that there is some clay, as Berene mentioned, in the soils, but there's also quite a strong gravelly fraction to the soil. And that gives the wine raciness, energy. And, when that is combined with a gentle winemaking technique, it can just give you this weightlessness and this power. And that's really what you strive for in the grape.
And as we wrap up, just an introductory look at Pinot Noir as a whole. Nadia, for people who don't drink a lot of Pinot Noir, take somebody like my Philistine of a wife, for instance, who refuses point blank to drink Pinot Noir. She claims it's too light and it doesn't have enough. I'll get around to it eventually. If you are just starting out, what do you look for in Pinot Noir? What sets a Pinot Noir apart? What's going to take something that's not too bad to something that, oh my goodness, that is incredible?
I think, thanks for having me on the show, Dan, first of all. I think for me, Pinot Noir is powerful without having the weight. If you look at it in the glass, it's usually quite lightish in color, but once you put it to your nose and once you taste it, it needs to have that real layered fruit flavors or baking spice, and then the tannin structure as well, and the acidity with that. I often hear Kathy van Zyl speaking that the acidity really helps with the structure of the wine as well. You look at all those components, the tannin, the acidity, and just the intensity of flavor, for me, is just Pinot Noir can carry you to a different world if it's good in the glass.
If you are currently watching this and you are not now instantly thirsty and craving a glass of Pinot Noir, go and see your doctor tomorrow morning. There is something fundamentally wrong with you. I've got some with me and I want to try some. I want to know more about the stories of our 5 incredible guests. And as we're with you, Nadia, let's pick up from there. If you can, tell us a little bit about how you got into the world of wine and then how you now find yourself trying to correct the mistakes of these two brothers who keep trying to make and sell wine on behalf of the brand.
Two troublemakers. So I was born on the banks of the Berene River, where my father is still farming grapes today. He's the 5th generation farming the the land. And then in 2004, I did my first harvest at Hamilton Russell Vineyards. Actually met Berene there for the first time in 2004 as well. And yeah, I think the bug bite of Pinot Noir bit in California, where I actually really got introduced to Pinot Noir. And after that harvest, I did 2 years in Constantia. And then in 2006, joined Gordon and Bevan here at Newton Johnson. And in 2008 was our first Pinot Noir harvested off our first vineyards that Gordy planted in 2003, 2005 was the first year that they planted Pinot. And it was just a bit of a light bulb moment, I think, tasting that wine for the first time, and we were like, wow, this is not half bad. And yeah, it just all grew from there. 15 years down the line, and we're still at it. We're still learning, and it's exciting. We are looking at expanding certain blocks and doing new plantings, and I'm excited for the future. Yeah.
You've also got an interesting division of labour. There are the two brothers who, when they're not surfing and arguing with each other, Bevan looking after sales, providing Chardonnay for breakfast if you go and visit, and generally being a wonderfully welcome host. And then Gordon making wine, as do you. How is that division of labour, and who gets to make the final decision when there's a bit of an argument over the direction a specific wine should be headed in?
Dan, you can't see it here, but I've got an extremely big whip. And yeah, I like to swing that whip whenever it's necessary.
Is it challenging though to have two winemakers? Do you work really well together? Are you kind of supporting each other, or are there creative differences of opinion from time to time?
Creative differences, no. I think the reason why Gordy and I work well together is because we've got the same end product in mind. We enjoy the same style of wine, and we've gotten to know these vineyards together as well. So we've got different ways sometimes of getting there, but it's great. I mean, in the end, it's a matter of we each know at the beginning of the week or beginning of a day what needs to get done. And we say, okay, right, you take that, I take that, and we just make sure that whatever needs to get done gets done.
We've got a few partnerships to discuss on the show this evening. If we look at you, Jessica, your husband, when he's not running his real estate business, has a rather successful wine business as well. How does that work for you as a sounding board? Is he ever brave enough to tell you that maybe he doesn't quite like a particular wine? How important is that aspect of the relationship?
It's just been an incredible marriage from that point of view, because we never run out of things to talk about. In fact, sometimes I think we say to each other, okay, now it's time to not talk about wine. No, we really share that passion, and I think it's been great how we've complemented each other, because I have that winemaking background, and when the wines are young, I must admit sometimes I could see he was struggling a little bit, like this wine is just out of barrel, I'm not sure how is it going to end up. And that's where I need to then, bring in my background and just say, this is how the wines taste when they're young, and just try and look for this in the bottom, sort of underneath, and let's taste again in spring, because that's usually when the wines taste much more approachable in barrel. But no, I think to answer your question, yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, he's very, very strong on his figures as well. And so that's helped me a lot with directing the business. He's even been my delivery man at times. I mean, what doesn't he do? He helps with the kids. He's just amazing. So I'm very lucky. Yeah.
As, of course, is he, the man in question, Roland Peens of Wine Cellar fame, amongst others. We've had him on the show before. He sounds rather South African. Jessica, you do not. Give us the background, how you find yourself where you do, and what the wine journey was.
All right. Yeah. So my mom's South African. My dad was German. And they met in Namibia many years ago, and then ended up living in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for 13 years. Where I was born, which is quite ironic since I now am in the alcohol business. There was obviously not a drop there, although I fondly remember a story of my mom sending my sister to school with a bottle of water, thinking it was water, but it was actually sadiki, which was some form of spirit that they brewed in the cellar. So I'm sure she wouldn't be very happy knowing that I'm telling the story. But so that's where I was born, and then I lived in Germany for 6 years, and we arrived in South Africa in '96. So I'm pretty much South African with a bit of a strange twang because I went to an American preschool and I speak a few languages. And I guess that's also how I ended up in wine, because I had this desire to continue traveling throughout my life, to stay in touch with my European heritage. And I loved nature. We were always somewhere hiking, walking, and I was privileged to grow up in Blouberg, very close to the beach, and nothing to do with wine really, except that my family loved wine. And one of the things that my mom always used to bring back for my dad when she did come to visit her hometown, which she left for 28 years, was some fantastic wines like Canon Corp, etc. So I grew up tasting just a little bit of wine every evening at the age of 14. And, I developed a passion for it. And when I asked myself, which job could I do which wouldn't let me sit in front of a desk from 8 to 5 every day, I knew it had something to do with nature and travel, and winemaking was just spot on. But I was quite scared to take that decision immediately after school. So I took a gap year and I traveled overseas to France and Italy, and I managed to work in 2 different wine regions in France. And that year I then managed to get into Stellenbosch University. Excuse me. The following year, I managed to get into Stellenbosch University, and I did a 4-year degree there. And after that, I was so keen to get into the vineyards, but the salary was very, very small. And I did start in the vineyard in 2008 at Bosschaert Finlayson, and only in 2010 I finished my studies. And from that point on, I worked in sales and marketing, because after the first harvest, Peter Finlayson said to me, you speak a few languages, you're good with the people that come here. Just, this is a job offer and it's a good salary, so just take it, So he gave me great advice, and I'm grateful to him, because that opportunity led me to understanding so much more about the industry than sometimes one can derive just from a winemaking position itself. So that's my background, 7 years in sales and marketing. But fortunately, every year I was able to be in the cellar at each farm that I worked at. That includes Klein Constantia and Kleinwood in Stellenbosch, so 3 different wine regions. And then I started making my own wine in 2015, which was very fortuitous. I was speaking to Peter Allen one day, and he offered me a ton of grapes from the prime vineyard in Verleersdorp, which grows at 700 meters above sea level, of which I make the Nom Pinot Noir, and Nom standing for Nom Kubelwane, the ancient Zulu goddess. And so that basically started in 2015, and I quit my day job in 2017 to become a full-time winemaker, full-time mom. I had my first baby in 2017. And that's also why I have a little baby angel depicted on my Homme Pinot Noir label. Oops. That's the little baby angel that was strapped to my hip when I made the first vintage of this wine, the Homme Pinot Noir. And so here we are 7 years later, and it's been a great journey.
Journey that's culminating in some terrific wine we're going to drink in just a moment. I love that story. There are also some Austrian forefathers, I think, as well. There's plenty winemaking in the past as well as the present, and definitely the future. German background there. There's also a bit of a Swiss background to the creation wines, because along with Roger Federer, J.C. Martin is Switzerland's best South African-Swiss combination. What about your partnership there, Carolyn? When you're selling the wine, you've got J.C. see making it. Is it a beautiful duet and a perfect chorus, or do occasionally the voices raise just a little as you try and work out what's best for the wine?
I think that, we both have this passion. I was born into wine. My dad offered to me, on my 16th birthday, I got to have a La Tâche for my 16th birthday. So Pinot Noir is something that's in our blood, in our family, in the Finlayson family, as well as in Jean-Claude's family. He's totally passionate about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And, so we have this common love for Pinot Noir. We both are completely committed to what we do. We sometimes don't agree on things. I really push the envelope sometimes because I'm quite challenging. I kind of believe in innovation, and so I really push the envelope when it comes to sales and marketing. But he's doing the same on the winemaking side. So we kind of have the same intention, and that is to be a really innovative wine estate and to produce really great quality wines. And so that's our mission, really, and to produce fabulous Pinot Noir, which is totally world class and recognized as such.
You preempted my follow-up question ever so slightly by dropping the name of royalty in South African wine. Is there an option, if you are a Finlayson, to do anything but make wine in life?
Well, we kind of purposefully made sure that we didn't sort of involve our kids too much and let them come to the party themselves. But Emma, made her first Pinot Noir when she was 10, and Glenn is now a third-year enology student at Stellenbosch. So it's just one of those passions, it's great to be able to surf, make wine. Glenn's actually going to do his internship with his cousin, Peter Allen. It's just one of those continuous things. People say to me, is a 10-year-old allowed to make wine? Surely not. And when you have an artisanal skill which is passed from generation to generation, it is perfectly fine to do that.
And the results keep showing. I'm looking forward to tasting those first, because there is such a great family tradition. Tell me a little bit about the value of being part of this extraordinary family, because I think 1 in 8 people in the South African wine industry is a Finlayson, and we're very fortunate to have that, because it's not just a great family, but a family full of knowledge and full of passion. Being at the center of that family, what do you draw from that? How much has that helped you in your own wine story?
I think that, I was born at the gates of Hartenberg, and I've literally grown up in the wine industry. So much has happened via osmosis. Literally doing tastings on my grandmother's terrace when I was like 5 and I couldn't find her, to getting involved in wine tourism at Blaarklippen when my mum started that. And it's just been a support base. It's always been one of those things where whatever was needed to be done, everybody was all hands on deck and really just kind of got stuck in. And we love our clients and guests. They just bring such an awesome amount of innovation to what we do. Often the great ideas come from them and from journalists and from all the people around us. So I think it's about listening to everybody, seeing where to take things, having a super engaged team. So, it's certainly not just JC and myself. We have a fantastic team that work together with us in the vineyards, in the cellar, in the tasting room. And it's a beautiful lifestyle and also a great way to do business. I couldn't think of anything better. We work close to nature. We work in some respects in a scientific way. We work from a marketing point of view around the world. We're very connected to the rest of the world as well as our domestic market and to our clients here. And it's a super way to live.
It is indeed, and it is such a beautiful part of the world. I've been to Croatia on many occasions, usually leaving a lot fuller than when I arrived. Food is almost as good as that terrific wine, and it's a part of the world. It's also home to Berene, just down the road. I think the last time we had you on the show, Berene, as well as telling you a wonderful story, you were talking about the next chapter. There was land. I think you were looking to plant your first few vines. What's the latest on that space?
Yes, Dan. The latest on that space is really me getting the desalination machine or system set up there, because I drilled 2 boreholes and both were a bit salty, brackish. So my water quality wasn't that great, but there is ways to rectify it, and also building a freshwater dam. So I must say the pandemic a bit curbed the cash flow in getting all of that things done. But next month, the machine is getting installed, and also the electricity. And also getting the electricity points was a very lengthy process, I must say. But yeah, if I can get the water up and get the analysis then of the processed water, I'm planting. So as soon as possible, really. And I'm going to start with Pinot Noir, only, about 2 hectares. And yeah, hopefully soon I'll see what the vineyard does there in Tesselaarsdal.
A big part of celebrating Women in Wine this month has been the role models and the examples and the celebration of women who've made a big part of the South African wine industry work. Yours is twofold, because it's not just being an inspiring woman in wine, but also just an inspiration in your community as a whole, irrespective of gender. As you spend a bit more time on your particular wine journey, on building up this Tesselaarsdal brand, how much more aware are you of playing that role within the community, being someone that other people can look up to as a success story and as a local leader?
Yes, Dan, I was actually quite overwhelmed of the response from the Tesselaarsdalers. There is a few also that religiously buy the Tesselaarsdal Pinot and Chardonnay. And I really strive, my main goal with getting the property there and kind of pioneering Pinot Noir in Tesselaarsdal and having vineyards set up. I will be then what we would call the first generation, of planters there, or vineyards. And I've got 2 boys, 2 kids as well, that will hopefully then be the second generation. And we will then be in my community the first generational farmers, really, of vineyards. But my goal for my community really is to get the youth, especially the women, involved. I give men their due, but women is also so very particular in detail and attention. And the other thing is, as people of color in our communities, there is a lot of single mothers, really. I am a single mom as well. And so we are usually the breadwinners of the house. And I would like to install wine knowledge. Onto the generations in Tesselaarsdal, situated in the Overberg, beautiful part also of South Africa. And I would love them to put it onto their children, and so the wine community can grow rather than wine abuse, if you know what I mean. So that would be my first goal. And I was given a great opportunity to start Tesselaarsdal Wines by Anthony Hamilton Russell, and his generosity and his skills development. I mean, Anthony steered me into the wine business when I started at his house back in 2001 as the au pair. And that changed my life completely, knowing what I know, having met Pinot Noir, my first experiences. So I would love when the vineyard is set up there, just to give someone else that same opportunity that was given to me. So that's mainly my point A.
I love that passing on of opportunity, and you're doing so much of it, and passing on so much to us as well, just watching the show. So thank you for that, Berene. I see Lisa Harlow's watching at the moment from the UK. Exciting to be hearing about Pinot Noir today. Some of the best in South Africa here. Well, they certainly are. And Catherine Marshall is foremost amongst those. We've spoken, Catherine, about the challenge of making Pinot Noir. How does the challenge of making Pinot Noir compare to the challenge of getting to base camp on Mount Everest?
Wow, I didn't think that was going to come up. But Dan, that whole story started when I was a very young girl, and I was given a book by my mother called Tintin in Tibet. And I must have been about 6 or 7 or 8 years old. And I devoured this book every night. And I was so fascinated by the fact that nobody could go there. And so through my life, I started reading up about Tibet and was fascinated by the history of the culture and of what happened in 1959 in the revolution. And it kind of later on in my life, when I went back there and took my son there, after my partner Pete died, we went to go and look at Everest, because Pete was a great mountaineer, and we were dragged up all sorts of mountains around South Africa, and the Drakensberg being almost our second home. And so part of my journey to Base Camp Everest was for Pete, and also because I wanted to see what Pinot tasted like at altitude, and also from that great fairy tale kind of story that I followed with Tintin. And it was also a search for of why Pinot again. And somehow I alluded to the spirituality thing. I needed to go and investigate all of that. And it was amazing because after spending time in Lhasa with quite a few of the Buddhist monks and getting a sort of a handle on that sort of way of life, and being immersed in sort of a culture that is being completely throttled by another regime that we experienced in South Africa. But the joy of that was also out of that was that we met an incredible amount of very different people, and I got to see most incredible geography. It just blew my mind, the kind of rock formations and mountain formations that were there. And I think that's also another passion of mine, which is why that's also part of my culture of Pinot is rock and soil and dirt. So anyway, as we went on our journey and ended up staying with a whole lot of nomads in these yak tents for a few days. Most amazing families that we met and stayed with, and it was right at base camp, and it was quite amazing because we were told all the way along our journey, you at the start of the monsoon, you're never ever going to see Mount Everest, because it's going to be covered over. So I just said to Jono, it doesn't matter, this is my son, let's just go. And for 3 days we sat huddled in the tent and went out on walks, but the mountain was still covered. And on the very last day, I remember Jono sticking his head out the tent and looking up in the direction, and he said, "Mom, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen for you." So I said, "You know what? It doesn't matter. Let's just go. We've got 5 hours left. Let's just go and walk up, and let's just go and have the little metal enamel mug of Pinot." And it was clay swirl that I took up with me in the back of my rucksack, and off we went. And it's true as God, Dan. It was an hour that we were walking up the clouds just opened up, and there was 3,300 meters of the most incredible piece of mountain, because we were about 5,200 meters above sea level. And I remember sitting there looking up at this incredible piece of geography, and there was this woman from Berlin sitting next to me. And I gave her a cup of my Pinot, and we both looked at each other, tears just rolling down our faces, because it was just an incredible moment, listening to the chanting of the monks down at a monastery just to our left, the yaks to our right, and this incredible mountain and Pinot Noir. And I swear it was almost like I was levitating. It was the most incredible moment. And I think that and at that moment, I kind of realized this is what my journey with Pinot is about. It's not about me necessarily having to get to the top of Everest. I don't need to do that. But in my journey with Pinot, it's about every year, every vintage is so tricky and difficult that you need to adjust your climb, and you need to adjust the way that you put your feet and negotiate with how you're going to get up to the next base camp, because it is incredibly difficult. And so this wine that became my Pinot Everest kind of getting to the top it's in this wine. So this is me climbing Everest every year in my finite elements Pinot Noir, of which I make very little, but it's fine tuning and it's really pushing the envelope to get this wine to the next base camp, as it were, in terms of quality. And I'm very proud of my finite element wine. It's me. It's all about me, and I love to showcase that as part of my range.
And you, obviously, you'd been out to base camp. I didn't realize the story was quite so personal and quite so wonderful. So I'm very glad I asked you that, because it's such a lovely story to being able to share with us. And I'm glad serendipity struck on that final day. We've got great stories. We've got great wine as well. And we're going to run out of time if we don't finally drink some of it. So while we have you here, Catherine, what I have here is the Pinot Noir on Clay Soils 2020. I would like to know who Mona Lisa's cousin is, and then tell me a little bit about this particular wine.
Yeah, she is very broody, I do admit. But if you look at the two labels, you've got the sandstone and the clay, and I think they are fantastic ambassadors for what you're going to taste. The clay soil, the Mona Lisa, very broody, and I think that's pretty much how the wine sits in the mouth. Very savory. It has a lot of kind of ironness about it because the clay soils do carry a lot of iron in them. So you're getting much more savory, forest floor, wet forest floor, truffle, all of that experience. And it's got the grunt. I love that word grunt, because although we have, as Nadia said, the wine is light in color, there is power. It's that famous saying with Pinot that it is the iron fist in a silk glove. Well, this wine is exactly that expression. It's got the grunt, but yet it's got beautiful femininity about it. And you've got the silk glove around all of that. And I love that part of Pinot is that it's so beguiling. There's so many different layers and edges to it. There's so many different stories to tell about each of the Pinots you'll taste today. And so that's why I created these two. The sandstone is very much more ethereal. It's pretty. It's kind of, it's almost like a princess, whereas the clay soil is much more of a diva. You know, it's very broody and it's moody, but it's gorgeous, and it's great with fine dining food. Whereas I would serve the sandstone slightly more chilled with a lovely cut of salmon or clams or langoustine or a beautiful summer fare. So that's why I kind of have these two to tell that story.
At an incredibly basic level, imagine you're speaking to a grade 2 geology class, so basically to me.
Good question.
We've got the soil, we've got the clay, we've got the sandstone. Why is it, very, very simply, why does clay do one thing? Why does sandstone do another?
Okay. Well, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I could go on forever about geology. I spent a beautiful day with one of Geoffrey Chambertin's top PhD people in Burgundy, and she's studying particularly those soils. And it brought it home to me that South Africa, because we haven't had earthquakes or volcanoes like they've had over the millions of years, our soils have evolved very differently. We have decomposed soils, so they've all weathered. And I think that makes us even more exciting. We have these ancient soils, we have these different layers, we have all these mixtures of soils, particularly in Elgin, where the two base soils are Table Mountain sandstone and the other one is Bokkerveld shale. And we've recently discovered that there's also another type of shale, and that's particular to Elgin. And the Hohoek, they call it the Hohoek shale, which I'm really excited to kind of get a handle on. That's a whole new project. But just to basically say it, the Table Mountain sandstone is very, very light, whereas the Bokkerveld shale is more clay and more heavy. And so you can imagine, I mean, if it's not rocket science, if you had to put your hand in the sandstone soils, it would be light and easy to break up in your hand, whereas the clay, it's a little bit more tight and more conglomerated. And so that already makes a massive difference to how the wine is going to sit in your glass. And that's what happens in France. You know, you've got Pommard, which is very big and bold because the soils are very, very different structured to, say, Chambord-Musigny, which is very light and pretty because those are lighter soils. And so I think that is really the departure here, is that the structure of the soil is going to definitely determine the way the wine sits in the mouth. And for me, the sandstone, if you had to have the two in front of you, it would be all very, very light and red berry spectrum, whereas the clay has got sort of more, as I said earlier, more iron held in it. So the roots in there are actually sucking up more of that. So it's giving the wine a lot more sort of earthy, savory, that sort of ironclad character, which is very, very typical of Elgin.
There's just so much depth, albeit at a subtle level, to Pinot Noir, and we're getting to explore a lot of that today. There is your geology class from Professor Marshall, who's climbed large mountains. That's what she's talking about. Let's jump over to Berene, who's got some fans out there. Dean Leppin, one of them, on YouTube watching. Awesome, Berene, great inspiration, and also to teach a respect for wine, which is such an important part about it. Teach us a little bit about this wine, Berene. What's making it quite so magical?
Thank you, Dan. Yes, so the Tesselaarsdal, the Pinot Noir we have here tonight, is the 2020 vintage. My very first vintage was 2015. So we've come a long way. But the Pinot Noir really expresses, so the grapes come from the Himalayan Valley, from Babylon vineyards, Lavieche vineyards. And I get in about 5 tons every year. And this wine, the Tesselaarsdal Pinot Noir, really expresses that site. So the Himalayan Valley has got some nice altitude. It's a bit further away from the sea, but it's influenced by the cool maritime winds, and it's dry lands. And this Pinot Noir has got the structure. It's also got lifted, clean fruit notes. So it's got that red berry, red fruit notes, which is typical to the Pinot Noirs from the Himalayan Valley. And it has also got some nice baking spices. It's got some cloves on it. And it is really, apart from the 2015, which I said was the best vintage, the 2020 really shows what the Himalayan Valley grapes is, what it comes from, and what the wine can do. Also, clay-rich soils. So that's where the structure comes from. But this wine, we also whole berry bun stomp, and cold soak just for added structure and flavor. And the end result or the feedback from this wine makes me very proud, as it shows all the beautiful elegance of the Himalayan Valley.
When you drink this wine, when you look at the growing empire that you have, and I say empire deliberately because I think it's getting there quite quickly, and then you think back to Berene the au pair, what am I going to do with my life? Here's a small opportunity. This journey that you've taken, I'm so inspired by it. Does it still put a smile on your face? Does it still catch you by surprise? I'm saying, gee, what I've done is actually quite special.
Dan, you know, that's quite interesting. I was talking to my brother the other day, and I usually, talk about, how I started at Hamilton Russell Vineyards and, started doing that. And, Anthony showed me this and that. And he actually paused the other day and said, Berene, wow, sometimes it doesn't sound real. And it's, it's something amazing and something great. And, sometimes I just, because I'm such a workhorse, a work soldier, as Nadia said, she met me back in 2004, and I was already then here since 2001. So I must say, the other day I just sat back and thought, my goodness, it's my own story, but it sounds sometimes surreal when I say it. But yeah, I've lived it. So yeah, I'm sometimes amazed by it as well. From au pairs, straight into the wine business. And the wine business is such an elegant business and so interesting. And every harvest that happens really gets me excited. It gets me nervous, really. I'm nervous, excited. I don't know what to feel. So, as long as that feeling is there, and, you can't wait to see what this vintage will do and all that. It's very rewarding. And I just do wish and hope my sons, as Carolyn mentioned, they must come to the party by themselves. I don't want to force them, but yeah, there's some interest, but I do hope that they will follow in this legacy that I am creating, you know, and using my roots and the name Tesselaarsdal, the village where I come from. It's very honoring to me, and I love history. I love roots and everything about it. And the wine just creates an even more awesomeness to it, if I can put it that.
It's a modern wine fairy tale, and one I can't get enough of telling on Dan Really Likes Wine. Carolyn, just down the road, we have, I remember saying this to JC on the show a while back, but the very first time, I think it was possibly even you who gave me this, I thought, the art of Pinot Noir. Gee, this is an arrogant lot over at Creation, calling their wine the art. And then I drank it, and then this is art. This is actually absolutely fine. You can call this art because it really is an art form. I've got the 2019 here. I've just opened it. Give me an introduction, please, to this wine and why it is art, in your opinion.
I just wanted to say one thing quickly about Berene. Berene, your son is just magnificent. He came to work with us, and I think he's definitely going to get into the business. He was... I was impressed with him, a wonderful young man. The art of Pinot Noir is really based on the fact that I think people often don't think about wine, food, and perfume as art forms. And of course, they're probably the most mindful forms of art. We kind of think of art as being things that we look at for a few hours, perhaps a few days, for centuries, such as architecture and wonderful paintings and sculptures. But actually, food, wine, and perfume are consumed, and it's that moment of consumption that kind of, in a way, which is a very mindful experience, which means that they are beautiful art forms in their own right, because they certainly elevate one's sense of well-being and one's mood. And I think that, the art of Pinot Noir is really about the fact that Pinot Noir at its best is super elegant. It's incredibly intense and very beautiful. And so we've had a lot of discussion about that today. For me, the thing that is so marvelous about it is that often one would expect a wine like this to maybe not have the intensity, but at a high level it does. This is from a single site vineyard. It's from a pocket within the vineyard. It's really the pinnacle of what we do, and every bottle is numbered in its own right. For me, this is Prince Charming. It's really making the best of Pinot Noir. And I believe that that great Pinot Noir is an art form in terms of its elegance, its finesse, its intensity, and at the same time, it's just one of those wines that you don't tire from. So often, if you have a heavier red wine, it would tire the palate, and Pinot Noir never tires the palate. It flirts with the palate. It's so vibrant. It's so beautiful. It's all about texture and aroma. Yeah, lots of layers to it. My perfect pairing would be venison to go with this, or tuna.
Well, if you want perfect pairings, you just need to head over to Creation and have their 906 course menu, which is glorious. You'll stagger out, but gee, it'll be worth it. The depth, the intensity, the different layers of this wine make an opportune moment to ask you an important question on Pinot Noir. Because it is so approachable when in its young, you can drink it reasonably early on, but especially for something like the art of Pinot Noir, which is made to present the very, very best Pinot Noir that you possibly can as Creation. Is this something, if I can get a hold of some, that I should be hanging on to for longer?
Yeah, I think that ideally you kind of want to be drinking it in a sort of 5 to 10 year period. And it is possible to age it for longer. The thing that is wonderful about Pinot Noir is, and the reason it's so age-worthy is because of its beautiful natural acidity and what that means in terms of its ageability. So store it in the right conditions, find really good quality Pinot Noir. I think one of the reasons why people have maybe not enjoyed Pinot Noir is because I don't think it's because it's a difficult grape to cultivate, and you can only cultivate it in specific areas where you have the right climate. It's in quite short supply, and therefore you need to find good quality Pinot Noir because you need to enjoy good Pinot Noir.
Well, we've got loads and loads of that on the show. Let's wrap up with tasting with our final two guests. Nadia, just down the road at Newton Johnson, the Family Vineyards Pinot Noir, which is awfully hard to get hold of. So if you find some, keep it and never share it with anybody. Drink it all yourself would be my recommendation. Give us the introduction to this wine, Nadia. What makes it stand out?
So Dan, 2019 was not our easiest vintage on the farm. We had quite a warm weather in July, which in turn gave us very uneven budding at the beginning of September. We actually had to go into the vineyard and mark bunches of some of the spurs that have budded later, because the ripeness, there was just a difference in the ripeness. So we actually went in a lot of our vineyards, we had to harvest twice. It was the coolest summer ripening that we've had in 10 years. We've had intermittent rain during the ripening. So we were really very busy and very particular about sorting in the vineyard as well as in the winery. So instead of having 4 or 6 people on the sorting table, we had now 8 to 10 people sorting, just to make sure that whatever goes into the tank is the best and the healthiest grapes we possibly can. This wine it's about 33% new oak, all natural fermentation, as you probably know already. And the composition of this, if you are familiar with our vineyards, it's about 30% Mrs. M, 30% Wind and Sea, 30% from Sanford, which is our south-facing vineyard, and 10% of Sea Dragon. And yeah, quite a in its youth, it was quite tight and quite closed. A year on now from its release, it's relaxed quite a bit, and it's a bit more approachable, and just typical what we get from our vineyards is top notes of perfume and sour cherry, and but then still that backbone of juicy, crunchy tannin and acidity holding it together.
To use a very, very technical summary, it's just a glass of loveliness, which is why it's not lasting very long in my particular glass. Before we jump over to Jessica to wrap up, and that big announcement, is she really moving to Bloemfontein? We'll find out in a second. Before we do that, Nadia, 2 questions have come in. I see Ilse Rutherford, proud of you, Berene Sauls, and to all the other ladies on the show tonight. Look out for Ilse on the show herself a little later on this month from Compagnies Drift. Helen Nicol, my dear mother, more wonderful stories today. What an inspiring bunch of women, as is my mum, so in good company. And then 2 questions for you, Jessica, very, very quickly, if you can give us a short answer, if you will. Not all, this is from Winership Wines in the UK, not all Pinot Noirs drink with intensity, so what production technique makes some more intense than others? And then following up, money aside, what's the best glass to drink Pinot Noir from? 2 questions, fire away, Nadia, if you will.
Money aside, what's the best glass to drink Pinot Noir from? Zalto. I'm going to go for the glass I'm drinking out of tonight. I actually stood in front of the cupboard this evening, or before I came on the show, whether to take the Spiegelau or the Zalto, because the Zaltos are just so delicate that I often end up breaking one. But yeah, I just find that the Zalto glass, it's just you've got enough space to swirl and for the wine to open up, and it really concentrates the flavors up to the nose, and it's just, for me, a pleasure to drink from. What was the other question?
It's one on intensity, but I think you've given us the important ones. So we'll I think Madison Wolfbane's almost answered it. It's about the terroir and the production techniques. Nadia, thank you there. Let's jump over then to Jessica. And Jessica, before you make your big announcement, what could it be? Let's quickly taste the wine. Give us an introduction. Tell us why this is rocking Jessica's socks off, and probably Roland's as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is probably pretty much the best vintage I've made of this wine. It's the Pinot Noir from the Himalayan Ridge. A very lovely layer of gravelly sort of soil on top, and then a great rich layer of clay underneath. 300 meters above sea level and 12 kilometers from the sea as the crow flies. So as my ex-professor Alain Deloire said, probably the best terroir in South Africa, if not amongst the best in the world, to grow Pinot Noir successfully, but any other grape variety. But really, Pinot Noir does its best. And what I have in the glass is just this beautiful, delicate, red-fruited Pinot, which boasts with all sorts of underlying spice. It's got this concentration, this structure, and this poise, which is just so enticing, and it makes you want to reach for the glass again and again. And I am very excited to see how this wine develops over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, because it is really just still in its sort of infant stage, but it holds much promise, and many people like to drink wine fresh like this with this great acidity. So really up to the consumer.
Buy lots, open it every 6 months, see how it's developing, and find your sweet spot, and then just buy more of it. All right, we've all been very, very excited, Jessica. This big announcement. I'm very honored because you asked me if you could make it on the show, and of course you could. I'm the one who's enormously grateful. There is something very exciting happening in the Saurwein world. Tell us what it is.
Yes, thank you. So we've just purchased a farm in Stanford, and it is to become the home of Saurwein wines. We are planning to do a regenerative agricultural model here, so a polyculture operation, and we're going to establish a small vineyard here too. There is water, we're completely off the grid here, and yeah, follow me for more updates on Instagram.
So in terms of that, what does that mean? Are you just kind of give us the next few years, how things unfold, what it means for Saurwein?
Thank you. Yes, so finally I will have a cellar door where I can receive visitors. The barn, which is actually destined to become a cellar anyway, will be converted over the next 2-3 years as the budget allows, and we will establish a small vineyard according to what the soils can offer at the moment. It's mostly ferrocrete and Table Mountain sandstone with a bit of clay, so we're quite excited to explore the different cultivars we might be able to establish there. And it's become our home. We've moved out here 2 weeks ago. We are very much smack bang in the middle of settling in, and it is wonderful and busy and crazy, and I don't think it's going to get any less busy because we have big projects. We have chickens, some Nguni cattle, a big vegetable yard which we've just planted, and plenty of trees, and yeah, there's definitely no shortage of beauty out here. 12 k's from the sea, and we can't wait to host all our friends and followers here eventually. So yeah, follow this space, and we'll keep you updated with some exciting news.
An already exciting brand just got even more so in one fell swoop. Jessica, it sounds seriously cool. I know you're going to have a great deal of fun. I've got no doubt a great deal of success. Just that tractor driving technique I could see there shows that you're very much raring to go. And so I'm genuinely thrilled for you. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of news, not just for you, but for those of us who love your wine, and we are many. So best of luck with the new project, and enjoy it. And, we look forward to coming down and having a look at it firsthand. As I do, looking forward to seeing all of you guys in person, and I'm sure it won't be too long because you make wine that I love, and your company matches as well. So to Catherine, to Carolyn, to Jessica, to Berene, to Nadia, I thank you all very, very much, not just for being part of the show, for great wine, terrific stories, and for keeping me company this evening. So thank you to all of you, and cheers.
Bye.
So there we go. Our Women in Pinot Noir is part of Women in Wine this month on August. It is a great, great endorsement of the quality of Pinot Noir, but also another reminder of the remarkable women who are part of the fabric of the South African wine industry. So huge, huge thank you to all of them, to Catherine, to Berene, to Carolyn, to Jessica, and to Nadia for joining me on Dan Really Likes Wine this evening, coming to you live from the Arabella Sheraton, which is where I find myself, having touched down just a little while ago. And a big thank you to Mike Phillipson and his team for hosting us this evening. Just throwing forward to Thursday evening, let me have a look at my list of guests. Oh, there we go. We've got Elunda Basson from Sternberg, Erica Obermeyer joins us, Megan van der Merwe from Bokenstantia, Clarisse Langeveld with us as well. So we've got quite a lineup coming to you on Thursday, and we look forward to all of them sharing some great women, great wine, some great stories, and another celebration of women in wine in South Africa. Thank you for joining us. Remember, Wednesday is International Pinot Noir Day. Get down to Pick and Pay. I've been sworn to secrecy. Sworn. Katie Bailey won't allow me to tell you what's happening on Wednesday, but it is very cool. So if you're near a Pick and Pay on Wednesday, do get down. There's going to be a very cool Pinot Noir deal that you want to get your hands on. You're on tour. You also want to get your hands on the wine we've had today, and 5 terrific examples, and just another wonderful endorsement of our South African wine industry. That does it for this evening. Big thank you to everybody watching there. Shirmay Stradum, fantastic show. Well, all thanks to my guests, Shirmay, and the rest of our followers and watchers this evening. Thank you for joining us. Best of luck to Jessica as her new project gets underway, and to the rest of our winemakers, our women in wine. Thank you so much for being part of Dan Really Likes Wine. Have a fabulous week. Look out for Jade Seeliger from Nutritional Solutions, telling me what I should and shouldn't be drinking. That's on the show tomorrow. And we'll see you live Thursday evening for more great Women in Wine. Cheers. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.